on to our next session by Dr. Niranjan Saha ji. Thank you, Dr.
Namaste.
Niranjan ji, thank you for making time for this session. Dr. Niranjan ji will be speaking on the topic devotion as imbibed in Advaita-Siddhanta and Madhusudana Sarasvatī. Just a brief introduction. Dr. Niranjan Saha is Assistant Professor at the Department of Philosophy, Kaliachak College in the University of Gaurbanga from West Bengal. And before his current tenure with Gaurbanga University, he had previously worked at Ravenshaw University, Cuttack, Odisha, and in Indian Institute of Technology, Dhanbad, and Narasimhadatta University, Howrah, and University of Kalyani in West Bengal. And he has taught a variety of courses both on Indian philosophy and Western philosophy, including classical Indian philosophy to undergraduate and graduate students. Dr. Saha did his PhD from the Department of Religions and Philosophies, the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London. And for PhD dissertation, he did a study of Madhusudana Sarasvati's Gudartha Deepika from a Advaita perspective, wherein he tried to reconcile the two apparently incompatible concepts, that is non-dualism and devotion to personal God. Currently, he is pursuing his second PhD at the Department of Philosophy, University of Madras, where his dissertation is a topic dealing with Siddhanta Bindu, again of Sri Madhusudana Sarasvatī ji. And Dr. Saha has also published in-depth research papers in various journals of repute, such as Journal of Indian Philosophy, Sophia, Journal of ICPR, Journal of Vaishnava Studies, and many such journals. We are very glad to have you here, sir. Please go ahead and start your session.
Namaste. Namaste. Sutismriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Śaṃkaram Śaṃkaram. My sincere gratitude to the Indian Academy, to Indic Academy, particularly Sri Nitin Siddharji, and the respected revered panelists for giving me this opportunity to be with you. As the topic of the symposium goes, philosophical contributions of Madhusūdana Sarasvatī, the topic of my presentation today is Bhakti as imbibed in Advaita-Siddhanta and Madhusūdana Sarasvatī. Before coming to the topic as such, in this 25-30 minutes, I'll be trying to speak on three heads. That means my presentation can be classified in three heads. First, I'll be talking on the very notion of devotion, that is bhakti, and how the very term bhakti is etymologized, or how the notion of bhakti is present in relevant literature. Then I'll be speaking on the presupposition of Advaita Vedānta with reference to bhakti. Then I will come to the works of Madhusūdana Sarasvatī, and then there will be my conclusion. The very term bhakti or devotion is etymologically derived as bhaja, that means worship, is a dhatu or verbal root, plus tin is a pratyaya or suffix, as bhakti. The term bhakti or devotion presupposes the following. Number one, object of devotion That means the Supreme Godhead endowed with auspicious qualities. Number two, there should be a devotee who is inferior to the object of devotion and who seeks the grace and mercy of the Godhead. Then devotion, that is the attitude of the devotee towards the object of devotion. Then we find devotion the liberation, but some consider it to be superior to liberation, as is referred to in the Bhagavata Purana 3:29-13. Now we can say how the term devotion or the notion of devotion is present in relevant literature. There is enormous literature available on devotion since Ṛg Vedic times, a few of which are noteworthy here. Number one, we find Bhagavata Purana 1.2.6 to 7. We find devotion is of two types. Number one, the highest goal to be achieved in life, that is mukha or primary, or saddha or parabhakti. Number two, devotion as a means of attaining the highest goal in life, that is gauna or secondary, or sadhana or parabhakti. Bhagavata Purana 7.5.23. Now we find there are 9 forms of devotion: listening to the glory of Vishnu, Savana; singing the praise of him, Kirtana; contemplating him, Smarana; offering obeisance to his feet, Padashavana; worshipping him with offerings, Archana; singing his laudation, Bandhana; feeling dependence on him as a servant, Dasya; making friendship with him, Shakha; and surrendering oneself completely to him, Atmanivedana. In addition to that, we also find the presence of devotion in other literature, that is Narada Bhakti Shastra, particularly verse number 82. Devotion, though in itself is only one, it manifests in 11 forms. That is, love for glorifying divine qualities, Guna Mahatma Shakti, love of divine beauty, Rupa Shakti, love of worship, Puja Shakti, love of constant remembering him, Smarana Shakti, love of service, Dasya Shakti, love of taking him as friend, Shakha Shakti, love of taking him as a son, Vatsalya Shakti, love of him as that of a wife, Kanta Shakti, love of self-surrender to him, Atmanivedana Shakti, love of complete absorption in him, Tanmayata Shakti, and love of the pain of separation from him, Paramabhiraha Shakti. You also find the presence of devotion in Bapudeva's work, Bapudeva, an interpreter of the Bhagavata Purana. He mentions devotion is of 2 types: Vihita, enjoined by scriptures, and Avihita, that is not enjoined by scriptures. Vihita is also of 2 types: Shuddha, pure, and Misra, mixed. Avihita is also of 4 types: Kamaja, through desire; Deshaja, through aversion; Bhayaja, through fear; Snehoja, through affection. Misra is of 3 types: Jnana Misra, mixed with knowledge; Karma Misra, mixed with action; Karma Jnana Misra, mixed with action and knowledge. As I mentioned, the very notion of devotion is also, the very notion of devotion, is very much what's called is coincide with the presence of dualism. Thus, all these concepts Underlying the concept of devotion presupposes some basic difference between the devotee and the object of devotion. The object of devotion must be something other and higher than the devotee. Otherwise, none of the attitudes like submission, reverence, love, etc., stated above can obtain when it seems that the very notion of devotion is incompatible with non-dualism, that is Advaita, which ultimately denies the basic distinction between the devotee and the object of devotion. In the second head, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be saying how, the presupposition of Advaita is related to the notion of devotion itself. The Advaita system of which Śaṃkara, 8th century C, is considered to be the first systematizer, admits only a single reality, that is Brahman, which is non-dual, Advaya, and bereft of attributes, Nirguna. Other realities, such as the individuals of Jiva, universe, Jagat, and God Ishvara, are either non-different from Brahman or are superimposed on it. While the individual self and God are essentially Brahman, associated with its divine power, called illusion or nations, Maya or Vidya, the universe is erroneously superimposed on Brahman. So it seems that the Advaita philosophy cannot account for devotion, since it maintains all difference to be illusion in Maya. It doesn't also consider devotion as the means of obtaining liberation, moksha, since knowledge or jnana of Brahman alone leads to liberation by nullifying the apparent distinction between the individual self and Brahman. Then we'll be saying the three different realities, the levels of reality, and the notion of distinction in the Advaita system. Advaita, of course, as I mentioned, all the heads will be leading to establish that the notion of devotion is very much present in the Advaita system itself in general, and the works of Madhusudana Sarasvatī in particular. And Advaita metaphysics admits three levels of reality: sattvas, that's empirical vyavaharika sattva, apparent illusory pratibhashika sattva, and transcendental or absolute paramarthika levels. Whereas the world is empirically real as it appears, Brahman is transcendently real as it is never negated in any experience in any space and time. Some distinctions stated in the scriptures may be admitted at the empirical level, and hence devotion and worship can be of much importance at this level, so far as such activities purify the mind of the devotee and make it fit for receiving the knowledge that leads to liberation. All distinctions are, however, considered to be unreal from the absolute standpoint. The admission of devotion in the tradition of Advaita with reference to Śaṃkara's work. Now we'll be seeing how the great systematizer of Advaita, that's Śaṃkara, gave much importance on devotion itself in his bhashyas, in other works. Contrary to the choices of other theistic Vedāntins like Rāmānuja, Madhva, Vallabha, etc., against the Advaitins, that the latter's basic principles cannot accord any place to devotion or a personal Godhead, we find reference to worship, upāsanā, devotion, etc., not only in the Ṛg Veda, which bears the earliest testimony of Advaitic thought, but also in the works of Śaṃkara and many of his followers like Sureśvara, Śaṃkara, Vidyāraṇya, Madhusūdana Sarasvatī, Brahmānanda Sarasvatī, Nārāyaṇa Tīrtha, etc. In addition to a number of topical texts, Patrana Granthas and hymns, Stotas, Śaṃkara's principal commentaries like those on the Brahma Sutras, Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita unmistakably point out his devotional spirit and fervor, while the Brahma-sutras discuss the nature of devotion in a few occasions due to the nature of the text itself, and the Upanishads talk about devotion in the form of meditation, dhyana, and worship upāsanā. The Bhagavad Gita deals with devotion in an exhaustive manner. The majority of Śaṃkara's comments on the Upanishads indicate that both action, karma, and worship are necessarily devotional in approach and are therefore very important forms of devotion, or in other words, devotion is the necessary accessory of action and knowledge, in the absence of which the latter will not lead to their higher objectives, that is self-purification and knowledge. Reference to commentaries on Prashna Upanishad 1-2, Kena Upanishad 3.12, 4.8, Chandaka Upanishad 119, 1110, 122, Vedāntaka Upanishad 5.1.1, 3.8.9, etc. As the Brahma-sutras bear very few direct references to devotion, much of it is to be very far from the general spirit in which Śaṃkara interprets these sutras. However, as in his comments on the Upanishads, Śaṃkara in his commentary on the Brahma-sutras also treats devotion as complementary of action and meditation that lead to self-purification and finally to the intuitive knowledge of self-realization. As reference to comments from the Brahma-sutras 1.1.1, 1.1.5, 1.1.20, 2.3.41, 3.2.5, 3.2.24, etc. Though the text of the Bhagavad Gita prescribes all three means of liberation, namely action, devotion, and knowledge, and predominantly relies on devotion, Śaṃkara, while commenting on it, like his other two commentaries on the Upanishads and the Brahma-sutras, accepts the utility of devotion as something conducive to knowledge that ultimately leads to liberation. Introduction to his commentaries in the Bhagavad Gita. Then we find commentary on the Bhagavad Gita 2.11, 7.18, 8.22, 12.20, 10.10, 11.54, 18.54, 5, 18.66, etc. Though it is not exhaustive, at least. Thus, the efficacy of devotion as a means of self-realization has been undoubtedly accepted in the tradition of Advaita, which considers Śaṃkara's work as its foundational literature. Now, coming to the works of Madhusudana Sarasvatī, as I've already mentioned, Madhusudana was a great Advaitin in one hand and a great Bhakta in the other. Now, Madhusudana Sarasvatī and the inclusion of devotion in Advaita Vedānta. Madhusudana Sarasvatī, 16th century sage, an uncompromising defender of Śaṃkara's non-dualistic Vedanta, is also regarded as the foremost advocate of the inclusion of devotion within the Advaita system. A fact that is proved by his numerous works, both polemical and devotional, namely the vindication of non-dualism. I may mention the original work as such, but for the foreigners or other audience, I have given the English synonym too. I don't feel that it is more appropriate. Drop of doctrines, Siddhanta Bindu, the defense of the gem like non-dualism, Advaita-Rakshana. These are all polemical works. The elixir of devotion, Bhakti Rasayana, the illusion of the hidden meaning of the Bhagavad Gita, Gita Gurartha Depika, the commentary on the hymns to the glory of the Lord, Bahimastha Totika, the exposition of the first verse of the Bhagavata Purana, Prathama Salaka Vakha, the elucidation of the sport of Lord Hari, Harila Vakha, these are all devotional works. All the polemical works of Madhusudana, while enunciating the non-dualistic principles of Śaṃkara Vedanta, admit the efficacy of devotion as a means of purifying the mind, but his emphasis on the sentiment of devotion is noteworthy when compared to the attitudes of other well-known exponents of Advaita Vedanta, as the tenets of Advaita Vedanta seem to be incompatible with the doctrine of devotion. In his devotional works, particularly in his elixir of devotion, that is Bhakti Rasayana, and illumination of the hidden meaning of the Bhagavad Gita, that is Gita Gurartha Dipika, Madhusudana took up the challenging task of giving devotion a prominent place within the fundamental tenets of non-dualism and renunciation that are the hallmarks of Advaita Vedanta. Now let me discuss briefly these two important works on Bhakti by Madhusudana Sarasvatī, that is Bhakti Rasayana and Gita Gurartha Dipika. The elixir of devotion, Bhakti Rasayana, is a compendium of devotion, both in its cognitive and affective aspects, ever written by an Advaitin. Following the lead of Bhagavad Purana, Madhusudana in his work describes the definition of devotion, the means of attaining it, and its stages. 137. According to him, devotion is the incessant flow of the modifications of the mind, Bhakti, of the devotee directed towards the Lord. When the mind of the devotee melts by spiritual disciplines undertaken by him, he maintains that while in the Advaita tradition, modifications of the mind means the mind's assuming the form of the object of that modifications, devotion is treated to be a mental state assuming the form of the Lord by the mind when it melts. 1.3. After mentioning this to be the characteristics of unqualified bhakti, Madhusudana taking support from the Bhagavata Purana, Bhagavad Purana 11.20, 20.31 to 36, goes to the extent of describing the path of devotion as the highest end of human life, that is Parama Purushartha, which seems to be a pure dualistic Vaishnavite attitude, antagonistic to the teaching of Advaita. 1.1. Bhakti Rasa. Now, in the Gurartha Dipika, which is a running commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, we find that though the text of the Bhagavad Gita is full of theistic devotional orientation, Madhusudana's attempts to explain it from the non-dualistic point of view is noteworthy here. While accepting the basic non-dualistic teaching that knowledge alone leads to liberation is a commentary on Bhagavad Gita 3.1, etc. He points out that devotion is absolutely necessary for removing the obstacles in the path of self-realization, introductory verse 7, etc. He also describes devotion as a link between action and knowledge, introductory verse 6 to 7, etc. In a manner that is unusual for an Advaitin, Madhusudana maintains that devotion plays the role even after the attainment of liberation. He holds that for a liberated while living Jivan Mukta, devotion remains spontaneous. Introductory verses 37 to 38 of Gita Gurartha Dipika. Here Madhusudana quotes the same Bhagavata Purana, verses 1.7.10, as it does in Bhakti Rasayana. And that they, that is the liberated while living, the Jivan Muktas, being purified through the assertion of worship, develops a loving attitude towards the Lord. Commentary on Bhagavad Gita 4.10, etc. In order to highlight the supremacy of the path of devotion. Madhusudana describes devotion as both the cause and effect of the path of action and of the path of knowledge. Commentary on Bhagavad Gita 1866, etc. The most striking point to note in this connection is that Madhusudana is bold enough to assert that He knows no higher reality than Lord Krishna. As you know, Krishna Paramya Vitattam Aham Na Jane. It is very upward. But the supreme Godhead of the Theistic Vedanta, controlling parts of the comments on Bhagavad Gita 15.18, etc. As we find, the same verse, the same assertion is made in his Advaita-Siddhanta 2, which is a purely polemical work, Advaita-Siddhanta 2.7. Thus, these two works, that is Bhakti Rasayana and Gita Gurākita, in addition to the other works of Madhusūdana Sarasvatī, explicitly emphasize the efficacy of devotion even in Advaita Vedānta philosophy in general. Now, after briefly discussing his polemical works and his devotional works in particular, and the basic tenets of Advaita in general, we come to the conclusion that thus for both Śaṃkara and Madhusudana, the path of devotion is complementary to the path of knowledge that ultimately leads to liberation, a view that is truly commensurate with the fundamental principles of Advaita Vedānta philosophy. Though such an admission is made from the empirical level and not from the transcendental level, where nothing but soul reality, quote unquote, Brahman, can be admitted as real. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Niranjan ji. Thank you for highlighting an important aspect of Madhusūdana Sarasvati's writing. Thank you very much.